Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which, seeing Thunderbolts after last weekend having the second worst domestic opening in the history of the MCU, right? Whether you adjusted those numbers for inflation, whether you looked at the estimated ticket sales, both still pointed to the same fact that only the Marvels had a worse domestic opening weekend. So things were not looking all that good, though Thunderbolts has been well received by many people. It's gotten very good positive word of mouth. There's a very passionate community over on Criticlist that's really just trying to will that film to success and will that film to existence and trying to convince people that it's good, even though, again, objectively, it is quite flawed and not really all that great, again, at least according to my own personal view. The fact still remains, despite the fact that opening weekend was pretty bad, right? Again, compared to the history of the MCU, it is now expected to, this is kind of the nature of the box office that we're in right now. We saw this happen with Sinners. It's looking like we're going to see something happen at least similarly to Thunderbolts, where, guess what? Thunderbolts expected to have a pretty insane hold, at least for an MCU title, if the film ends up holding around where this is happening. Even though it may have had one of the worst openings in MCU history, it is also now looking to have one of the best second weekend holds in MCU history. That is right. This film right now projected by Box Office Theory to drop only 49%. If you go over to some of the others, right, $38 million is what's being currently projected. You have 34 to 40 million being projected by Box Office Pro, so very similarly. So they're expecting maybe a little over 50% of a drop. And then over on Box Office Report, they're expecting around a 51% drop with $36.5 million being reported there. Whether it is 49, whether it is 51, or even if it's upwards of 55, it is still going to be one of the best box office drops. This is exactly the kind of thing that Marvel wants to see, what Disney wants to see, because this is going to be a kind of drop that you saw for a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, there might be some out there saying, well, hey, if it's dropping in the same rates as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and that film also had good word of mouth, doesn't that mean that we could see this film reach the heights of a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? And this is where I would have to push back and say, no, not really. And the big reason why is because of starting point, right? Holds and very strong numbers are very, very good, of course, but it all is dependent upon what is your starting point. And the fact remains is that whereas Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 started a lot higher than this movie did, Thunderbolts started on the very low side, right? One of the worst openings in MCU history. And so it's going to have to work off of that. And so even with these really good drops, and again, objectively speaking, they are very, very good, strong drops, especially for these massive type movies, it is still something that it has to overcome. Now, with that being said, even though it's not going to reach the heights of Guardians 3, which got to $845-ish million, right, got very close to $900 million worldwide, because of where it's currently tracking, you could still potentially see this film end up getting a lot higher than the initial estimates may have indicated, right? Remember, going into this weekend, we talked a little bit about how most films on average tend to make about a third of their entire global box office in their opening weekend. And so if we again take that into account with an average run, that would put the film after its opening weekend globally of $160 million to be put around $481 million. Now, because this film right now is doing better than the average, what that means is that, hey, $500+ million for this film is absolutely on the table. And that means that, guess what? At $540 million at its break-even point, this film now has a chance to actually hit a break-even point. Now, again, this is, of course, assuming that $180 million budget is actually accurate. We all know, and people might say, oh, you're just trying to cope and see. No, these are box office facts. You can go ahead and look back to the reports that we were given, right, what the reported budgets were on several of their films, all the films that were shot in the United Kingdom, because they're the only ones that we actually get, honest tax return information on, but every single one of them, right, all the reports said, oh, it only cost $150, $180, $200 million, and then, oh, turns out cost over $300 million for every single one of those movies. There was no exception to that rule for the United Kingdom releases. Again, each one cost at least $100 million more than what had been reported by the trades. And so we just have to, again, based off of that track record and that history, assume that we are looking at a very similar situation for all of their movies. And so if that is the case, then that would mean that this film probably cost closer to $250 million or more. Now, again, we're just going to go based on the reports. Hopefully, the likes of Caroline Reed and others over at Forbes and other investigative journalists can maybe try to dive in and find out more about the actual numbers here. But based off of the information that we have available to us, and that's all that I can really work off of here on the channel, this film right now is looking to be positioned to actually, hey, have a good chance of making some money back. Not where we thought this was going to be after its opening weekend. And again, people were like, oh yeah, word of mouth is going to help this thing. This thing's going to do Guardians level numbers. And as I said, it's not going to do Guardians level numbers because it just didn't have that starting point. It didn't have the same starting point. And so it's just not going to be able to, practically speaking, objectively reach those numbers. It is still, however, going to be able to reach numbers that are a lot higher than Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot higher than Captain America Brave New World. Brave New World capped out around $415 million, and because we know that budget was a lot higher because of reports, guess what? That means that this movie is not only going to have made more money on paper than Captain America by the end of its run, but also is going to be profitable, or at least potentially profitable, whereas, of course, we know with Captain America, that is just not the case at all. So this is a much better situation. It also goes back to, I remember saying this months ago, right? Obviously, the opening weekend, it seemed to kind of nip this in the bud, but months ago, I said, you know what? I suspect because Thunderbolts is being at least perceived as an entertaining movie, and obviously I don't find it that entertaining, but clearly a lot of people do, that type of mindset, or at least that type of movie, has a way of moving itself with many fans. We saw this especially with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and so I said, don't be surprised if Thunderbolts ends up being actually the best performing, or one of the best performing of the MCU films this year, possibly even better than Fantastic Four, possibly even better, right, than some of these other projects coming out, even some other non-MCU titles. Again, kind of like possibly a sleeper hit in many ways. And again, we're still not quite there yet, right? There's still a lot of box office to be counted, and we still have to actually see what the real box office is. Again, this past Monday, it had a 72% drop. That's a typical type of drop. It's not the worst drop-off that we've seen in MCU history, but it is still a pretty sizable one nonetheless. It's also been interesting to see how well Sinners has been doing, right? So it speaks more so, I think, to the strength of Sinners than to the weakness of Thunderbolts, but the fact is Thunderbolts did drop quite a bit in its daily performances, right? Only making around $4.3 million on its first Wednesday, whereas Sinners, which has been out for 20 days, made $3.1 million. So again, even though there's excitement around Thunderbolts, people are clearly liking it to a large degree, it definitely doesn't still have that same type of support, that same type of energy that, you know, the MCU films of old seem to have. So again, we'll do some comparisons this weekend just to see how well this thing is doing domestically compared to other titles. But it is, again, I think something where, hey, mostly good news for this project here. So again, that's Thunderbolts. Sinners right now, again, another insane fourth weekend drop here, only dropping another 23% projected here, 25.6 million being reported by Box Office Theory as a possibility, 17 to 22 million dollars being reported by Box Office Pro, and Box Office Report saying around 27.5 million, only 17. So they're being very bullish there, saying a 17% hold for this movie. So no matter whether it's in the 20s, whether it's in the teens, Sinners just doing really well, going to make over $200 million domestic. So this film continues to rock and to roll. Some of the other films on this list, Minecraft movie also holding well, 32% drop there. This film slowing down to the point where $1 billion, again, I do still think is going to happen. It just may not be until the very end of its run. The fact that it's still making this much money from its initial release, though, definitely has a positive sign. Accountant 2 still dropping off quite a bit. This is that example, right? Good word of mouth does not automatically mean you make money, right? Thunderbolts is an example where good word of mouth has clearly helped it. Sinners, example of good word of mouth helping it. Accountant also had really good word of mouth too, but just was not able to get that same audience there. A new film called Clown in a Cornfield. Sounds like a horror film from Shudder, which I have no interest in. $2.4 million for a new release. Until Dawn, 40% drop for that film. That film's actually been doing pretty well. Amateur, 37% drop. Shadow Force coming out this weekend from Lionsgate. Sounds terrible. And The King of Kings also holding out pretty well. Let's go to the charts because we love Chauncey on OMB Reviews, and so sometimes these numbers don't always update because they're from Box Office Mojo. But as you can see, $177 million worldwide is the last time there was an update for Thunderbolts. Let's go ahead and pull this up here. Yeah, $177 million is indeed what the numbers.com also has. So it still has a long ways to go, right? $185 million in financial losses as of right now. If the box office were to stop today, it is quite sizable. And so we'll have to, of course, wait and see how things go. It's looking pretty good, though, I will have to say, right? Being objective here, the initial estimates for this movie are looking really, really good. Until Dawn, on the cusp of breaking even, probably be able to do so this weekend. Accountant 2, still a flop, right? Even positive word of mouth can't always save a movie. This is an example of that, just had too big of a budget. Sinners still, again, according to the numbers right here, is still in the red territory, $14 million in the red. Now that's going to change this weekend, right? I said that it might have been able to change over the course of this past week. That has just not happened at this point. Now let's go ahead and just make sure, because sometimes, as I've said before, Box Office Mojo is not always the best. So $247 million, that's exactly what's being reported here. So that's still $14 million in the red based off of the current trends of where most films need to be to make their money back, but that'll easily make that back this weekend. So this film will officially be breaking even profitable by the end of this weekend. So again, something that was not looking like it was going to happen after its opening weekend, which was not all that great. Second weekend drop-off changed the game there, having historic 5% drop. Third weekend went on to have another crazy hold, especially for a third weekend, and now fourth weekend's looking to have another insane drop as well. And so clearly it's been building and building. So $300 million at least worldwide by the end of its run is looking very likely. That also means, right, not the largest of profit margins in the world, right? When you're putting around $90 to $100 million into your movie, and then you're getting about maybe, let's say at this point, we could say $20 to $50 million in net profits. Again, that's good, but it's really not all that great in comparison to the numbers that you're putting into it, right? You want to be able to make enough not only to pay for your next film, but also the film after that, for the marketing budget for that too. And so again, that's why profit margins do matter. Again, profit margins are a whole nother game, though. When it comes to individual releases, though, this film is a success. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. People somehow get triggered, though, and they focus on only a couple of words that I say and not the full sentences that I say. But hey, those sinner simps are going to continue to attack me no matter what I say about the film. The Amateur, $88 million, again, still financial loss there. Drop on the cusp of breaking even. We'll see if it's able to leg out there. Warfare, still in the red territory. King of Kings, profitable. Minecraft movie, again, $876 million. I thought this film would be a lot higher by this point. It's going to easily get to $900+ million this weekend, but question really is how much gas does it have left in the tank? I think $1 billion is still on the table. It's going to have to do quite a lot, though, to do that. All right, I just want to be very clear there. So it may very well might not hit $1 billion, but I do think it is still on the table. Working Man did a lot better than expected, right? $15 million in losses there for people who are wanting on the update, but VOD sales are going to easily make that up for a movie like that. So again, not the biggest box office profits in the world, though, and so again, just like with Sinners is in a much better position because this is even without VOD sales. So Sinners is going to be a much bigger success in that regard versus a Working Man, but again, people like to know what's going on with those films. And so those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that Thunderbolts is going to have this crazy hold, right? It's looking like that's the case. Everyone's projecting it at this point in time. Personally, I think the film is not good. I think that it's, yes, another reminder that Marvel has kind of lost their way. I think some people are kind of overhyping it to a large degree. I think people are just, again, kind of ignoring some of those glaring flaws. And I think we've gotten to the point where we're so complacent, and we gotten to the point where we're just so used to things being complete dog crap that when it ends up just being a small, tiny turd, people forget it's still a turd. No matter what you do to it, no matter what the size of it is, it's still not good. So it's just amazing how people will convince themselves that things are good because they are, not woke, or because they are not as bad as it could have been, or not the worst thing ever. It's like, okay, just because it's any of those things does not mean the film is actually good in any sense of the word. Performances in the film are for the most part pretty good, but really, again, lacking entertainment, lacking everything else. But again, most audiences seem to be disagreeing with that, so the numbers will speak for themselves. But your thoughts, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you also smash the rumble button as well. And also, please make sure you pray. Habemus Papam. We have a pope, so praying for Pope Leo the 14th. Great name there. Excited to see what happens, cautiously optimistic, but we'll have to wait and see, of course, what happens. He had a very good first homily at his first Mass as Pope this morning, so very much looking forward to see what happens from this point going forward. Anyway, that's going to be for me, everybody. You have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed Friday, and as always, God bless. Now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illick and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribe Star people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. Also a huge shout out to my newest YouTube member, Raichu. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy, shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started, and also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people, have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.